We've arrived, MVP Real Estate Podcast with Marcus and Dan, a show developed for the educational purpose of everything to do with real estate and investment. Buckle up, let's go. Welcome back to Season 3, Episode 2. Dan, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Good. It is bright and sunny, 35 degrees here in the Milwaukee area where the show is taking place. I don't know if we got into it with the first side, but you're in more Racine, like the south part of Wisconsin. Me being in Oconomowoc, more in between Milwaukee, Madison. Weather's all the same. It all just kind of stinks right now. Being in the middle of winter, but we don't have snow, which I'm happy about.
Yeah, that makes it tough conditions sometimes with my rear-wheel drive car. So
yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
And the little one is a little upset. We haven't done much sledding at all this year. I think we've gotten out once. And that was about it. But I'd take that over not shoveling.
Yeah, I have a big driveway and a roundabout and not really much sidewalk, but it's a lot of surface area to clear with just a little mini Toro snow thrower. So
yeah. And I think like right now I'm cool with the snow, but what I hate is the spring when it starts to rain, everything gets gray and slushy and that gets everywhere. That's the part. So like not having it would help during that period, which would be great. No gray slush, which I'm looking for. Looks like Brandon is logging on here.
Welcome.
Hello.
Look at the official setup with a professional mic and everything.
I know.
Yeah, well, let's just make sure that it's working now.
I can hear you.
Okay, good.
When we started the show, we had like the professional mics and we were all set up in my like studio up in my attic. And then COVID hit. And then less and less people wanted to do face-to-face podcasts. So I was like, oh crap, I just bought this equipment and now no one's seeing people.
Well, this is all kind of leftover from my days as a film composer. So, I've got my recording studio here. But if it looks better, I can scratch it.
I like it.
Okay.
I wonder if I can do like the digital microphone that just sits here. If they have that filter yet.
I don't have the capability to edit that for you, man.
We'll get there. That'll be Season 4. Well, Brandon, thanks for joining us. I appreciate the time. I'm going to probably ask you more about your history in filmmaking. You said it was film?
Yeah, composing music for film.
Oh, really?
Yep.
That's awesome. We've had one other guy who did radio, and he had the same setup. He had all of his mixers. He could throw in audio from his like little keyboard at any point. He had the setup. What is that?
Hit you with the effects.
Oh yeah, he could hit any effect you wanted. It was great. And last time I had him on, he was trying to figure out how he could rent out his studio space for other people to record, which I thought was a pretty good idea. Radio hacking instead of house hacking.
The command center of the staging company. So not gonna rent it out. I wish I had more time for music these days, but yeah, trying to grow this company, that's kind of the full-time gig.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's a good. We can jump into that if you're ready to go. Dan, we're recording, right?
Here we are.
Cool.
Yeah. I wanted to double check with you guys because the podcasts are just free flow. Let's see where it goes.
Absolutely.
I'm interested in getting to know you. I'm sure I'm here because you're interested in getting to know me, and then hopefully this forms a pretty cool relationship going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, all of our shows are free flowing. Whatever rabbit hole we go down is where we go. When we started the show, I had scripts and questions to ask. We got to like 2 to 3 questions. So like we never got through it because there were so many other things that I wanted to ask about before we got to the end. Sure. So we just said, we're going to scrap that and then go. Some people do prefer a couple questions beforehand, but usually everybody likes the just have a conversation flow of it. So that's how we've kind of kept it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, where are you guys located?
I am in a smaller town called Oconomowoc, which is in between Milwaukee and Madison in Wisconsin. And then Dan, you're in, is it Racine?
Yes.
Okay. Racine and Kenosha are like the same thing for me.
It's just north of the Illinois-Wisconsin border on Lake Michigan, probably 55, 60 minutes north of Chicago.
So this
So
morning I was waking up and complaining about it being 50 degrees here in Texas. So what's it like up there?
You're in the good land. What part of Texas are you in?
So I live in a small town outside, about an hour outside of San Antonio.
That's where we'd go for. This is not part of the show, I guess. I played college baseball and we'd go down to San Antonio because our coach played at St. Mary's.
Yeah.
So we would stay on campus there. And then, I mean, baseball was fun, but our day off was the best part. We'd go down to like the Riverwalk,
Sure.
Pat O'Brien's. Shout out to that fine establishment for having us have a lot of fun
Sure.
down there. The Hurricanes, they catch up with you.
Pat O'Brien's.
Yeah. Yep. The Hurricanes, they catch up to you quickly.
Yes. About halfway through the first one.
Yes. And they limit you at 2. That's the first place I've been to. They cut you off at 2. You cannot order any more of them.
Yeah.
Which I think is
about the Riverwalk though. You can always go next door.
Yep. Exactly. That's what we did. And then do you ever watch Impractical Jokers?
Oh, all the time.
Okay, they did a show at Pat O'Brien's at the San Antonio location where they had to go and sip. If you ever watch the show, the Hurricanes, they had to go onto people's table and drink their hurricane and see how much they could drink.
You know, inevitably, we travel a lot, and inevitably, whenever we are, staying in a place and we haven't hooked up laptops to watch Netflix like a normal human being, and we're just flipping through the channels, it's always Impractical Jokers. Like,
good.
Yeah.
It's such a good show. I remember watching Whose Line Is It Anyways when I was a kid with my dad. And I feel like this is now, like Miles is going to grow up knowing that we watched Impractical Jokers.
Which version of Whose Line Is It Anyway?
He watched both. I like the Drew Carey version.
Yeah, that
like
one was
the American, I guess.
Right.
Which is weird because like MXC, have you ever watched that show?
Oh my God.
MXC is so much better than the spin-off of the American version, which was like Wipeout.
Wipeout, yeah.
Yeah, MXC anyway, all the time.
So going back to my history, back in the day, I was a paramedic in LA, and a lot of my friends would moonlight on the set of Wipeout because there were just so many injuries that they had.
Really?
And so many medics just standing around.
That I can imagine. That show is along with what is it, American Warrior or Ninja Warrior?
I think it's American Ninja Warrior. I don't know.
Yeah, that one I'm sure they have a lot of medics around too, because I'm watching that show. Like I'm not trying any of that.
Yeah, my kids are way into that.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would do the Wipeout thing. I think that would be fun. But I'd want to be on MXC just because I want to see what audio they dub over. The writers.
Wait a minute. Is that so? I think that predates Wipeout. Is that the one that was like on Comedy Central and they would do
Yes.
really, really bad overdubs?
Yes.
I remember that show. That was awesome.
Don't get eliminated.
Don't get eliminated.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Man, childhood. That was great times.
That is a blast from the past. What a deep pull.
Oh, yeah. I still pull up some YouTube videos of MXC.
Man,
They never get old.
Yeah, they were some of my favorite. You know, like I'm pushing 40 here, so I think I was a kid in a different era, but I laughed so hard at some of those things that cannot be made today. Like that show, because of the overdub, could not be made today. Tropic Thunder could not be made today.
Oh, yeah.
I laugh my ass off every time I see it. You know, any Will Ferrell movie from the late 90s, early 2000s could not be made today.
Yeah. I mean, two of the biggest comics that were made, South Park and Family Guy, could not be started right now. There's no way.
Arrested Development couldn't be made today. The Office
is good.
Even though
it's
the most streamed television show on any platform, cannot be made today.
Yeah. Yep. I got to see Seth MacFarlane in Milwaukee. There's a little piano bar, and he came by and got up on stage just on like a random Saturday and started doing like a little, I don't know, off the cuff little piano silhouette comedy show in the middle of this bar. and it wasn't scheduled. He just like was like, "Hey, I'm gonna hop on the piano," and the pianist got up and he took over. Super cool, funny. I was there for maybe like 20 minutes and then I had to go to work, but super funny dude. And he just thinks of it off the top of his head and
Yeah.
switches personality left and right just on command.
I
Super
mean,
talented dude.
25 years of practice at this point. Like, he's like, oh, I'm going to voice this entire guy for the show. And then I'm going to drink a cup of coffee and then voice this entire character for a show. And I mean, his talent just completely, it like humbles me because you see those people that off the cuff, and I've known a lot of these guys, throughout the years. I knew a piano player with perfect pitch, and he would, I mean, he was on the continuum sessions for John Mayer, but like you meet these guys and they like completely humble you with just their grasp of their craft.
Yeah.
Like in my craft, which I think has switched a few times in my career, it's like never in a million years will I be, even half as good as these guys.
Yeah. And like I take it into its separate sector. Like people like Seth MacFarlane, Jamie Foxx does it too. I know Zach Galifianakis is a different humor, but like all three of those guys come up to mind. They introduce music and comedy,
Mm-hmm.
industries that I cannot do. Like I'm not a stand-up comic. I don't think I'd be good at it, and
Totally.
I don't know how to play a lick of music. So like for them to do it together on stage and make a show of it, like kudos.
Totally. Absolutely.
So, but that all comes with past, and they've been doing it for years. So, as a really bad segue into you and your life, you've switched from paramedic, music, and now home staging.
Yeah, man. Talk
Yeah,
about
tie those together for us here.
I don't know that there really is a way of tying them all together. I've kind of like always been I've always been driven by the mindset that anything worth doing is worth overdoing, and I'm kind of driven by like uncommon milestones, right? So I became an EMT when I was 16. And why 16? Because that's the youngest that you can be an EMT in the state of Virginia, right? And I was already
That's
at the
awesome.
squad when I was 15, and I basically had to stand around and watch people and like wash trucks and stuff like that, right? And as soon as I turned 16, I became an EMT. Also, 16-year-old college student, right? Like
Dang,
Nice.
I was homeschooled. I went into school for high school. Had horrible grades because I aced every test and never did the homework. Um, and sitting down with my dad and he's like, "Hey, do you want to go to college next year? We can just drop you out of high school, take a placement, a whole bunch of loopholes, right?" And ended
yeah,
up in college. So waiting to become an EMT at 16. In college at 16. Became a paramedic at 18. Why 18? Because that's the youngest that you can be a paramedic in the state of Virginia, right?
that's awesome.
In hindsight, that's scary. Like putting somebody else's life in the hand of an 18-year-old that like barely has anything figured out, right? Um, anyway, long story short, graduated college, moved to LA as part of a missions organization. Um,
What year did you graduate college? Do you remember how old you were?
oh, um, I had like a gap year. Went to India and Korea and Israel and England and a whole bunch of stuff in between. I think it was 2000. It was either 2005, but it might have been 2006 when I officially got my diploma. I don't really
Okay.
remember.
That's
Um,
still super cool. Like a lot of experiences within that gap year. Like I wouldn't take that as a negative at all in the path of where you're at.
yeah, man. Um, so ended up in LA. That's where I met my wife. We were part of this missions organization. We were kind of tired of not being able to buy food and stuff. So I went back to working as a paramedic in LA, um, which was kind of boring. Like you spend a lot of time in the passenger seat of an ambulance just waiting for something to happen. And so that's where I was like, you know what? I love music. I pulled out my laptop and I opened GarageBand at the time, and um, I was like, hey, let's just play around with stuff, and started layering stuff and layering stuff and layering stuff. Had a bunch of friends that were in the film industry, so Did a couple of pretty small projects. Released 3 albums on my own. So I think all in all, I did like 13 films and 3 albums. But as we started to have kids, then it was like, it's time to grow up a little bit, Um, so, and there was also this like defining moment. Like, I think everybody's got their origin story, but there's a couple of defining moments in mine. The first one was when I think I had gotten home at like 2 o'clock in the morning from a shift, and my wife handed my then 9-month-old daughter to me, and she just screamed because she had no idea who I was. Like, we had been on opposite sleep schedules for her entire life, and I was like, okay, it's cool. Like, I'm providing for the family. I'm paying some bills. What kind of quality of life is that providing for my family, right? And
Yeah.
especially if and my wife was 5 months pregnant with our second, and so then I was like, right, I think that math adds up. I don't know, they're 14 months apart. So I was like, something's got to change. So we moved to Kansas City with a much lower cost of living, and I decided to go into sales. And starting at the bottom, looked like the musical instruments department at Best Buy for me, right? And then I
Yeah.
learned kind of quickly that I had a knack for it. If you added the rest of the department up at that Best Buy that I worked at, they almost got to where I was in sales. Um, and
So you're doing all right.
what's that?
So you're doing all right.
Well, I mean, there was no commission. It was just straight hourly. So I was like, I need
Oh,
to
dang.
make commission off of this, right?
Hmm.
So I went to Sprint, same thing. Number one in the store, number two was about 50% behind me. Um, and long story short, ended up coming to this really small town in Kerrville, running a sales department, and that led to, IT sales. And, after a while, just kind of with this theme of like anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. I've always been very comfortable with risk. I've always been very, comfortable doing, uncommon things, and kind of, one of our core values is inspiration. Like, we lead from the front, right? So leading from the front's kind of a big thing for me. And I found an opportunity to buy a staging company. And, and I had two thoughts initially. Like, number one, I wear the same black t-shirt every single day. What do I know about interior design? This wonderful backdrop, courtesy of my team. I didn't do any of that, right? um, and anyway, the other thought is like, and I'm not gay, and I'm literally the only straight guy in any of these environments, which, um, it's good. So I bought a staging company, and
Okay.
kind of my response was, if somebody's stupid enough to loan me $1 million, I guess I will buy this company. And I would loan me $1 million. And so I bought a company, and I mean, it's sales, it's marketing, it's, knowing how to lead a team, with all things that I thought I was pretty good at until I, had to learn how to scale myself. And so learned really quick that I was just over my head in leadership, and started learning a lot about that. But 2001, I was at the 10X growth conference and had an opportunity to sit next to another staging company owner, and he's like, "Hey man, I'm selling my company." I was like, "Cool, have your broker call me on Monday." So 2001, we did it again.
2001 or 21? Sorry, I don't want to correct you.
Oh, sorry, 2021. Yeah.
Okay.
Dates, not a strong point.
No, but that's cool that you're at this convention, and from where I heard it, you were kind of already like, okay, I'm kind of over my head, maybe. I'm gonna double down and buy another one.
Anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing.
I like it. I like it. All right, so 2021, you get the offer, you go through and you buy it. So now you're sitting with two staging companies. Where do you go from there? Like, where you go back to the office, now you sit down, you're like, all right, I got two staging companies. Are they in the same area or are they separate?
San Antonio and Orlando.
Okay. So how do we manage those?
I have an amazing team in both locations. And we've learned a lot along the way. I was very, very fortunate to have strong leadership in Orlando. So I spend about a week a month there, just to kind of, bring my personality and my drive and, connection with the team. San Antonio was a completely different uh, entity entirely. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes, like trying to figure things out. And April of 2022, had to come back from Florida and fire half my team in San Antonio and kind of start over. But I think I got pretty lucky with Orlando.
Yeah. And were there similarities that you liked, or were they different and you liked the different, like, are they in different avenues, like one residential, one more commercial, or were there a lot of blends or overlaps?
Um, Man, that's a great question. There was a lot of blend and a lot of overlap, I think, in what we were trying to do.
Okay.
It's only, yeah.
Okay.
I think the major drive for me was kind of like, I don't know, Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Why? Because if Earth is destroyed, Earth is kind of like a single point of failure for us as a species, right? So I said,
Mhm.
any data that I get here in San Antonio is not really valuable because we want to be in all 50 states, right? The goal is
Yeah.
to build $1 billion company here that is in all 50 states. Um, so any data collected in San Antonio is somewhat valuable, but it's even more valuable if we can replicate that same data in a completely different market. And so I think that was the big drive for me. I was like, I can kind of figure out how to manage these two companies, one remotely, and I guess they're both remotely because San Antonio is an hour away. But um, I think the real thing was, what's working in both locations at the same time. And we spent all of 2022 trying to figure that out, right? And we spent all of 2022 trying to figure this out in an environment where, gas was going up $1 a week.
Mhm.
The cost of buying furniture went up 5x. The cost of labor went up 2x. Um, we in both Texas and Florida, we had a residential real estate boom that you even mentioned that you might be thinking about putting your house on the market. You're going to get 38 offers all over asking, right? And so
Yeah.
the sales pitch for, hey, we're going to help you sell your house faster and for more money wasn't necessarily working. So we
Yeah.
are like, we're trying to figure out, okay, what is working? What's working in both locations? How do we grow this thing? Okay, what works in the north? What works in the west? What works in the east? And just trying to figure out a lot of that stuff. So to go back to the question, I think the opportunity for a new challenge, and a new like calculated risk, I think was the most appealing thing to that acquisition.
Yeah. And obviously, with any new company acquisition, there's going to be an amount of risk, but having one already makes that risk a little bit less. And I would equate that when I started in real estate, I was always listening to the podcasts of people starting. And they're
Mm.
like, well, I just want to start. So I'm going to buy a single family. I'm going to buy a single family, start small. And then there's a few people that come in and they're like, to manage a single family house is just like managing a fourplex. If you can get the funding for the fourplex, get the fourplex. It's more of a mitigated risk because you've got three other units rented while one goes vacant rather than having your one house go vacant and now you're 100% unoccupied. So like it was just like changing my thought process of like, yeah, it's a risk and yes, it's more money, but it's actually safer to spend more money than just to buy the one. And that's kind of what you did where you're like, yeah, it's a risk, but we've already got some things rolling. It's not like it's a brand new world. We just got to figure out how they both work together. And you take your experiences from old and you apply it to new kind of a system, which I think is awesome to see somebody take the steps on that. Not many people do it, so kudos to you.
Um, I may be a little too comfortable with risk at times. Hey, but I wanted to go back to a comment that you just made. The
Yeah,
single versus the fourplex. Do you guys
yeah. What is it?
you guys have kids?
I have one kid. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I have
Yeah.
four.
You got four?
I do.
Yeah, me too. How old's your oldest?
21. My next oldest is gonna be 21 in 3, 4 weeks, and then soon to be 18-year-old, and then a 9-year-old.
Oh, so your oldest two are really close together too.
But it's we have a blended family. So my daughter and then my wife's two, um, the 21-year-old and soon to be 18-year-old, and then I have the 21-year-old, and then we have a 9-year-old together. So it's a little Brady bunch, but um, yeah, it's working for us. I remind when you said that thing about you already had one in Texas and you were looking at the acquiring the one in Florida. It reminded me of that. I think it was Jim Gaffigan stand-up bit where he's talking about.
I know where you're headed
Someone
with
asked
this.
me what it's like having four kids. He said, "Imagine you have three and you're drowning, and someone hands you a fourth kid." So it's just like you're all in already. So what's the point of adding another? I mean, it's funny because it's relative, right? Makes sense for what you did with acquiring the second one, and the same thing with your fourplex story, Marcus. Go
Yeah.
from one instead because at that point when you have just one, it's like it's so much work for the little bit of, I guess, not even profit sometimes, but it's so much work just managing that one property. Why not have it 4x? You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And then they talk about having 4 units, and why would you drive to 4 separate units when 4 of them are in one spot? That's
yeah,
less drive time. So like all around it does make sense just to pile it on. But
100%. And my oldest is 13. And despite my grandpa being outrageously successful in multifamily, it kind of like skipped a generation, and I didn't talk with him about money or finances or business strategy or anything until I was like 35 years old, right? And so asking about the kids, and legacy and stuff like that, it's incredibly easy to buy a fourplex. Now, when
mhm.
you're 18, 19, 20 years old, whatever, it doesn't seem incredibly easy. But when you're, pushing 40, like it's actually incredibly easy. It's incredibly easy for an 18-year-old to buy a fourplex, right?
Yeah.
And if, we all have that conversation, like if I knew then what I know now, so then it's like, okay, well, now it's my responsibility as a parent to, tell my kids how easy it is. And like, hey, why rent an apartment when you can buy a fourplex, qualify off the cash flow of the fourplex? You live in one with a
Mhm.
roommate, and then you rent out the other three. And then when you're done with college, move out, do it again. Move out,
Yeah.
move out, do it again. I mean, my wife and I moved 13 times in our marriage. Like, imagine if we were making money and like, building, holdings
Yeah.
every step of the way.
Yeah. And I actually had a kid, one of my roommates in college and teammates, he now teaches down in like the Lake Geneva in Wisconsin area. So it's like an hour and a half south of me, maybe an hour. But he teaches in, I guess it's technically like the special ed department, but not everybody is like special ed. He takes students who maybe are just like maybe have like ADHD, which in this example, this kid, he was diagnosed with ADHD, but he was always like entrepreneurial. He didn't know what he wanted to do, but he wanted to do anything but school. Like, in my buddy calls and he's like, "Hey, I got this kid. He's a bright kid, but he's scattered. Like he's got just flights of ideas." So he starts coming up once a week and working with us, and I'm sitting there talking to him, and I'm like, "Hey, you've got like 50 ideas. Like just drill down to one and do one idea and then go to the second idea. I'm not going to say don't do them and just concentrate on school because I'm talking to you and you're a smart kid. You want to do all of the things." And I go back to the Ron Swanson of don't don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one thing. So
Right.
just whole-ass one thing. And then the school year ends, he does another apprenticeship, and then all of a sudden I connect with my roommate again, and they're like, "Yeah, he actually is he's listing a house down here that hasn't sold in like a year." And it's a little outdated, but he is now like trying to sell this, not as an agent, but just for sale by owner, got a listing with this guy. He he markets as an Airbnb because it's like a 10 bedroom, but super outdated facility. So he
Right.
markets as an Airbnb. He contacts the news station for them to come film it. He goes on and talks to him. He's 17, sells the thing for like 1.2 million.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is like, just keep going, man. You've got like an it factor of just without fear in your mind, you're just going to go do the thing that you can do. So like that's a kid that I'm going to keep a little tab on just to see where he goes, because he reminds me of you, where he's just like, I don't care how old I am, I want to do this, I'm going to go do it regardless of what people tell me, regardless of what the normal is. I'm just going to go do it.
Totally. I think well, I heard the story once. There's like a FedEx driver, and he's been late on delivering packages, like running behind his quota, right? And so his boss basically tells him like, "Hey, if you're late again today, you're fired," right? So midway through his route, he comes up to a gate that says "Beware of dog," and he can't see the dog. He doesn't know, what lies behind that gate, right? But he stops at the gate, and he like spends 10 minutes contemplating, am I going up to the porch or not, right? Well,
Yeah.
while he's contemplating, looking at that "Beware of dog" sign, a young 6-year-old kid walks in, opens the gate and runs right in. Why? Because the kid couldn't read the sign.
Yeah.
you know um,
Yep.
so I think a lot of times we put barriers for ourselves, between us and success.
Yeah, absolutely. And it comes down to the fear. And like you were saying, sometimes you have a lack of fear of what could happen. You just jump in. And that's, I mean,
I wouldn't say that I have a lack of fear. I just don't let it affect my decisions, right?
okay.
When I'm headed as an 18-year-old kid, when I'm headed to a car accident or a shooting or a, unknown, man down, we lost communication with them on the phone situation, right? My heart rate's a good 170.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
there's fear involved, right? My cortisol levels right now probably would kill the average person, but I just don't let it affect the decisions, and
Yeah.
I think that's a different mindset shift too, when now you have an executive team and a management team, and you have we're up to 20, 23, 24 people now, and there's those people, their families, their kids all rely on me, and so you can't let fear drive you or hinder you. At some point, like, you just got to do it afraid,
Yeah.
and kind of work through it. Jocko Willing says, prioritize and execute, right? Like, look at the situation, take a step back, take a deep breath, make a call, prioritize and execute, right? And think
Yeah.
about, the the people on your team, and, don't let them down.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that ties into like what you said as far as like being a paramedic, right? Your fear has to be subdued because you have to worry about the person that you're headed to take care of. Same thing like you said with your companies. You can't worry about yourself. You have to make the decisions for the whole of the company, or the best best decision to stay in business or stay profitable or things like that. Yeah. Nice Jocko Willing plug, by the way. I have read a couple of his books. I tell everybody about it all the time. I actually borrowed the book to one of my friends because extreme ownership, and I cannot recall the other one. It's the all
Dichotomy of
black. No, it's a different one.
leadership,
But
uh, leadership tactics, the field manual,
maybe
and a bunch of them.
I thought it had discipline in the title of it too, but I don't recall. I mean, if I was better versed, maybe read that one 2 or 3 times like I did extreme ownership. I'd know exactly what it is. But yeah, it's all relevant stuff. Um,
Yeah.
Fear
And
is a
that's a,
motivator.
yeah, I like the mindset correction that you gave me. So I appreciate that. Not letting fear affect you, because fear is there. It's a feeling you're going to get. But is it going to hold you back, or are you just going to go for it? I just finished The War of Art, and he talks about resistance. That's the major thing with battling with art, because art is not quantitative. You don't get like you put 2 in and someone else puts 2 in, you get 4 out. It's all subjective. And when he was a writer, so he talks about going down to write, and when he finishes his book, like, he has the knowledge in it, but the hardest part is sitting down and putting the words on the paper. And most of it is the resistance of, this book isn't good enough, or I'm not writing it in the way that I want to, or all of those inner talks that you have with yourself about what you can't do and why you shouldn't do it, and all that stuff is resistance, and getting through that resistance or that fear to get your job done that you have to do. And once you start rolling, it's usually all just flow state. Like, once you can get actually like with your fingers on the keys and typing, you can keep going. But getting to the keys is the hard part. From what that book was. I don't know if you've ever read that one, but that one hit with me.
I haven't, but I did hear a quote, something along the lines of, the voice in your head is not your own. So it's basically like, hey, you're either worrying about your own fears and it's your mind playing tricks against you, or it's your fear of judgment, or your fear of making a mistake, or others saying you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. How could you do this? Things like that. And, you know, I bring it to my kids, because like you said, they're early 20s, and the same thing. We talk to them about, you know, possible house hacking. We got my stepson the book, Set for Life. He wasn't interested in college, and that's not something we push to our kids. But he has more of the work ethic of, tell me what to do, I'm going to do it. He is, you know, coming up with his own ideas and trying to make his situation better. Meanwhile, my daughter is off at college in her 3rd year, going to be a PA, physician assistant. So it's a different conversation when you're saying you're investing in yourself right now, going to college. And then my stepson, like, hey, let's give you the building blocks to be self-sufficient with whatever you can do to get a property on and on your books, and house hack, or like you said, buy a 4-plex and live in one and rent out the other 3. We tried doing that. We established him with a credit card right as he turned 18 so that he could build his own credit. And we're in talks of doing the same thing for my stepdaughter now, who's going to be 18 next month. So we're thinking about just adding her on ours as a authorized user, so that she can tap into our use, but not be affected or not be able to spend with it, because we're not going to give, you know, she likes her Starbucks and Dunkin', and she's got prom coming up too. So there's a lot of stuff that we don't want her to take advantage of. But yeah, it's your head, your voice that sometimes can be, I know it stopped me a few times, and I wish I could overcome it. And that was one of my notes that I took down for this year. You know, get out of your own way. I wrote down, expect to fail or look forward to failing this year, and using those as lessons to, you know, turn it into something successful. So
yeah,
it's not about me, it's about you though. So
yeah, I was going to throw in a really good segue here, because I know there's fear around staging, and I wanted to get into actually what you're doing. So here's an awful segue for all the listeners. We're talking about fear. A big fear into home staging is, why am I going to pay a bunch of money for furniture? Like, does it really make me make more money? I feel like that's the number one fear or objection that you get from customers. And I say that because that was my number one fear. We just sold the house, just got accepted. We staged it.
Give us your pitch, man. Your best one.
Well, let me ask some questions. Why don't you help me pitch this? You know, what were the comps? How quickly did it sell, and what did it sell for? Generalities are fine if you don't want to like broadcast that.
No. Well, the house is a 5-bedroom, 3-bath, fully remodeled. We took the whole house down. There was a bunch of water damage, so the project kind of spun. We were just supposed to take off the roof, put shed dormers, add a couple bedrooms upstairs, be done like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
But so much water damage, we had to tear the whole thing down. We raised the foundation up and then just rebuilt. So with that, our budget changed mid-project. Our expected outcome changed. We were on a less desirable location because we're on a busier street. So the house itself, if you pick it up and put, what is that?
Had a lot of challenges
A
around.
lot of challenges, and as we reach the end, we're trying to sit at, okay, so that's my dog. He felt like dropping his bone. If you take the house and you pick it up and you put it into a subdivision, probably 600,000 with an HOA and a subdivision, but you'd get a smaller lot. So we're sitting on like an acre, but it's a busy road. The house itself is great though. So as we go through this, we're like, okay, our comps are sitting at maybe like 560, I don't know, 500 to 560, 570 range. Um, but if it wasn't on the busy road, it goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So we're trying to say, how can we pull in that like nice house HOA cozy feeling when you're not really in that environment outside of the house? And I am an agent, but with our workload and everything, we did go with a big box agent to list it. And that firm works with an interior designer and a staging company already. So as we're talking about it, I felt like it's super hard. I can look at the house and I can see what it can become. I've been through enough rebuilds. I can look at it from like the rough stage and kind of see what it's all going to look like. But it's super hard for someone coming in, not in that environment, to think of like, okay, well, this is where my dining room table is going to go. And how big is our couch? Do you think it'll fit here? Super hard to think about. So I'm thinking about like making this thing look as much like a house and homey as possible is going to help pull the focus in your eyesight in the house rather than out into the busy road and the gas station that's right next door. So that was my thought.
Yeah, so you're not alone. 9 out of 10 people can't imagine where the couch is going to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Yeah.
similar, I sold a house 2 years ago. When we bought this house, we thought it was going to be a great spot for our family. It's on a busy road. Um, about a month into, no, a couple weeks into owning the house, I dropped something on the floor and it rolled completely to the other side of the house. And I was like,
Oh, really?
so had a buddy of mine come in, look at the foundation. He's like, yeah, it's 3 inches off, right? And so,
Yeah.
and it turned out that it couldn't be fixed. Of course, we disclosed all this stuff, but we did the same thing that you did. I mean, we didn't take it down to the ground and raise the foundation, but we took a lot of it down to the studs and put a lot of work into rehabbing it, a lot of work into the foundation, putting that foam in and stuff like that. And we bought it at 298. I think when we sold it, the comps were somewhere around 325. But due to the staging, we got cash offers in the 450 range.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what we're seeing in Texas, what we're seeing in Florida. On average, homes that are staged go for 20% more than vacant
Yep.
houses. Okay. So when you actually like crunch the numbers on what that is, a $2,500 staging is going to net you, trying to do the actual numbers here, but like $100,000, right? So if it's a $400,000 house and it's going for 500,000 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
They say never do math in public. I'm usually but I've had a lot of coffee this morning. So, anyway,
We won't hold you to numbers. We won't hold you to numbers.
what we're seeing is on average 17 to 20% more, right? So when we're crunching the numbers, what we're seeing in terms of cash on cash investment is like 30 to 40x, depending on, market, selling price of the house, stuff like that. What investment can you or I make that will give a 30x cash on cash return?
Staging.
Yeah, exactly. I gotta give it away, right? But I've done reels and they do really well. I usually talk about if I say give me $3,000 and I'm going to give you $85,000 back, even if I halved that and I said 4,250, right? Would you do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All day long. I mean, like, how
Yep.
can I do it 10, 15, 20 times a day, right? So
Yep.
that's really what staging does. And, it really wasn't a great sales pitch for the last 18 months saying, hey, we're going to help your house sell faster. Uh,
Yeah.
but now it is. I mean, literally since June of 2022, the average days on market has gone up from like 4 or 5 to 39 to 40 in just 6 months, right?
Yep.
The
So
and
10x basically.
what's that?
So 10 times the normal amount, right? From 3 to 4 days to 30, from 39 to 40.
Yeah,
So
we're back to 2018, 2019 levels. We're not quite at 2008, 2009 levels, but we're at
Yeah.
2018, 2019 levels. And, let's timestamp this. It's January 2023. Since June of 2022, housing prices have gone down, depending on the market, like 12 to 20%, right?
yeah,
So,
Yep.
um, I mean, all the iBuyers are backing out of the market, because they can't make money in a market that's, going down, right? So
Yep.
why do we bring that up? Well, hey,
Man, and Zillow missed the mark on the iBuying thing. Did you hear about the whole how much they lost with their algorithm just being off on their marking? That was bad. But sorry to interrupt.
real bad.
Yeah.
No, anyway, so the point is, I mean, on average, a staged home sells 88% faster and for 17 to 20% more, right? So, when and I used to do this whole presentation on the return on investment. We would talk about carry costs, your mortgage payment, interest,
Yep.
insurance, any utilities, all that kind of stuff. Like, okay, if we can shorten, days on market 40 days, that's where it becomes like pending and under contract, right? But you still have financing timelines and option periods and all that kind of stuff. So you're actually looking at probably closer to, 60 to 75 days before you can actually stop paying your mortgage on that property and
Yeah.
stop paying insurance and stuff like that. So now we're talking, depending on the house, anywhere from eight to maybe $12,000 just to sell that.
Yep.
Whereas if we can shorten that time by half, then not only are you making that 30x cash on cash investment, you're saving money on the carry costs, and we kind of like consider ourselves a marketing agency that uses furniture, right? We know, okay, so this is your house, this is all the challenges around this house. We know who's most likely going to buy this house. So why don't we decorate this house with that person in mind?
Yep.
Right. And it's a huge compliment to, accomplishing that mission when the buyer's like, hey, can I purchase the furniture in this house? Right. That's
Yep.
the job. So that's staging. That's the sales pitch. That's what we do, right? We sell houses faster and for more money, a lot more money, a lot faster. The staging company, we have a very different philosophy. We are a marketing company first. We, deliver unparalleled return on investment. Of course, we get the decorating right, but that's a given when you're talking to a staging company. We want the process to be really, really good.
Yep.
So, like we just heard yesterday from somebody, they had a signed contract with another staging company. And they said, oh, by the way, we just wanted to let you guys know we're going to be staying in the guest bedroom off and on while we move out of state, right? And the other staging company is like, no, that's unacceptable. We don't allow anybody in the house while it's staged. And so they called us and we said, yeah, that's totally fine. We don't care.
Yeah. Why
But
wouldn't you let them stay in their own guest room in their own house that they
because
own?
people have like 30-page contracts with, like 100 bullet points that you have to initial. We have three.
Three seems better than 100.
It does, right? That's what I thought.
but they probably don't. I mean, not to speak for the other company, but maybe they're like, hey, I don't want anybody taking advantage or living off of my furniture, and feel like they're getting taken advantage of. But I mean, the furniture maybe for them is more of a visual than um, effective or tangible use, right? If that makes sense, I could maybe understand that. I don't want to go backwards with it, but I had a
Well,
question
like
like
liability on their equipment, you're saying?
maybe
Yeah.
Okay.
something along those lines. Like, hey, you say you're only going to be in one room, but you could be sitting on my couch watching the TV or whatever it is, like something to that effect. And maybe makes the furniture wear down faster, even though you live on your furniture that you have currently. Whatever. The question I was going
Yeah,
to
I
ask
never
is
really
like
thought of that.
when you have customers that you're trying to sell to, a lot of them might have that mindset where like, well, my house is different. I don't think that I need to do this staging because my house has this special feature. It's so unique. And I don't know, maybe they make the sale harder for you to achieve. Um, I've been in sales for let's call it 10 plus years now in different various forms. So I know how to get into the mindset of providing the need first rather than saying, here, take this as what we have that conversation, find the customers or the client's needs and then fulfill those and then say, let's make this work, right? So like how do you overcome that if somebody thinks that, this is a very unique feature of a house or their house overall is unique? They don't really feel like they need to make that investment. And then I have another question after that. Do you collect the funds up front or is it at closing you guys get paid out? Just curious question on my end. Nothing really relevant, but
Well,
I'll
sit
let
and
you
wait.
answer.
So this is a mindset thing, okay? That's a really cool feature in that house, and you really resonate with that really cool feature in that house. Are you the one that's buying your house?
Yeah.
Because if not, I mean, what are the odds that, unless it's like, a massive pool with a water park, which doesn't even translate to everybody, but what are
Right.
the odds that one really, really great feature is the one really, really great feature for the first or second person that comes to view that house? And the answer is it's astronomically low, right? So, how do we overcome that objection? We just say, hey, the way that you live in a house is not the way that you sell a house. And that's the same way
Yes.
if we stage it and they say, I hate it. It's hideous. Okay, cool. Well, we can decorate your next house uh
Yep.
more in line with what you want, right? But again, we're a marketing company. We know that the people most likely to come visit this house in the first 5 showings are this person, and we want to decorate for that person, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how you get an offer, right? If we decorate to you and your favorite thing is your emerald green couch with rhinestone tufts, like, cool, let's put one in
Yeah.
the house.
Yep. Yeah. No, it is so true. And I had the thought of like when you go to a hotel and you stay there, you put your stuff down, you go to the water park, it's the next day, room service comes in, cleans your sheet, folds your sheet, folds the little like towel, makes it look super cool, and you walk in and you're like, that was super awesome. That feeling, like through the build process, you lose that, or through you living there for 20 years, you lose that. You need to recreate that, open the door, oh my gosh, feeling. That one cool feature in your house doesn't have the oh my gosh, I'm home feeling. You got that from the service that came in and folded the sheets and made the pill look nice and put a chocolate there and organized the desk to look like it was new. That's what you recreate. If I got that kind of correct or the analogy fit.
Yeah, and when we sold our last house, like, we took photos of the deer in the front yard and stuff like that because we knew that the person that was buying it, and it turned out to be correct. The person that was buying it renovated the front porch so that they could air condition it so that they could sit in it with a rifle and because
Nice.
Texas that happens, right? Um, it's really about putting yourself in the shoes of that avatar that you're selling to, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the
And
curious answer is yeah, we take 100% payment up front.
Okay. Okay.
And it's
Interesting.
not it's not very expensive. I mean, when you think that we're putting $30,000 worth of furniture in a house, we're only charging On average about 2,800 for that.
So the reason I asked that is because we just recently bought and moved our house. I mean, not recently, probably about 2.5 years ago now. But when we were buying, like for me, obviously having 4 kids, we sold our house kind of on a whim through a friend of ours who's an agent. Uh, awesome. She did a great job for us. When when you're going into selling and then buying on contingency, because we couldn't buy unless this one sold, right? We couldn't make big purchases, couldn't put them on a credit card, blah, blah, blah. So the reason I was asking about like when you take payment, and I mean, you're the business owner, I'm just some random guy you just met today, really, right? But like, have you ever considered like offering, hey, we could take, payment on closing, but then bump your fee up another 5-10%. But like, hey, instead of $2,800, if you don't want to have the hit on your credit card, if you're trying to mortgage this or whatever, let's look at taking payment, but instead of it being 3,000, it's going to be 33 or 3,500.
Yeah, we have a partner that we work with. They're essentially a hard money lender that will front you the money to stage, paint, do roofing, power washing, like whatever you have to do to prep the house. Even flooring, I think.
Okay.
They give us our fee, and then they collect, everything that they've helped you out with at closing. But we have a third-party vendor for that because, I mean, we're growing so fast that we are buying furniture in real time, right? And so if we delay our accounts receivable, then, we can't provide the service to as many people as we do. So this has been kind of a good middle ground. But it's funny, I have a bunch of people who ask me that question, which is why we went out and we found a partner to help us with this. We have yet to have anybody take us up on it.
Okay.
So we get this question from about half the sellers that we work with, but nobody yet has done it. They just put it on the credit card.
Right. Okay. Yep. I have two challenges for you. I don't want to take away from Marcus's next question.
No, go for it. Go with the challenge.
Kind of random. Okay. So say you have a realtor friend that's listing a house. My challenge is for your sales team, however many people you have, is for them to find a potential buyer to request your staging services on a property that they intend to buy, if it's been sitting long enough. Does that make sense?
That's an interesting challenge. Yeah. So
you say
that we frame this right. So a buyer's looking, Zillow, Realtor, Redfin, whatever, and they see an empty house and they're like, I just don't know how I would do life here. Hire us to stage it, to show them how they would do it.
And then, hopefully, obviously that turns into a sale for them, or a buy for them, and obviously a sale for and maybe they ask to split the costs with the seller, right? So
yeah, I mean, that's similar to what we do on the Airbnb side.
Okay.
An investor comes to us and says, hey, high level, these are my goals. Or we work with a couple of property managers throughout the nation who will actually help investors make a smart decision on what to buy. And then, we come in because we've just done a lot of research, and, my family and I personally stay in a lot of Airbnbs. We've seen really good ones. We've seen really bad ones. So we know, exactly what we're going to put in that house. We can stay on budget. It's going to be super efficient. You're going to get 5-star reviews. It's going to photo really well. So yeah, I mean, that's similar to what we do on the Airbnb side.
And another bad segue, I'm going to throw that in here. You were talking about investors. For the investors who have rental units, let's say a tenant moves out, cleaning crew comes in, and you put it back on the market for it to be re-rented. And we've had this instance where that I had to chuckle when you talked about, like, are you the one buying this house? Because we've had ones where we've renovated unowned. So another person owns the property. We just manage the property. He moved. And when we went in to renovate it, I changed paint colors all over the place. And he looks at me, he's like, I hate it. And I was like, perfect. Because I'm not renting to you. You like granola, you like browns and beiges and earth tones. But like not everybody likes that. So like we have to put in gray floors and white walls and a gray wall here and then like a dark like just a blue random like accent wall. You're not living here, but when you move back, I'll repaint it all for you. But for right now, we're going to try to get you the most rental money we can. So we're going to make those changes.
Yeah.
So in that, the one thing that's super hard for an investor, if I have a tenant move out and I'm trying to market it for a new tenant, that's a very short window. Is that something where you would actually move furniture in for photos? Or can you do a digital staging? Is that something you guys are dabbling in or on the horizon of thinking about for those shorter tenant rollovers rather than a full staging 45 days to close timeline?
So we do this with apartments all the time. They
Okay.
get the stage so that they can photo it. Digital staging is also called virtual staging.
Okay.
And I think the only thing that it does right is that it's cheap. Even in the photos, it just does not look right. And I actually think so. If you're selling a house, I think virtual staging does more harm than good. And the reason I say
Yeah.
that is because even when we're not in the market for a house, my wife is constantly on Zillow looking at what's around and what's listed, right? And if she sees a house staged virtually with furniture that's just unattainable at the price point of that house or whatever, and she gets her hopes up around what she saw in the photos, we all know, because we're all in the industry, you have 5 seconds when the
Hmm.
person walks through the door to make that first impression, right? Well, if their expectation level is here
Yep.
because of photos and they walk in and they see this, you're never coming back from that expectation mismatch. So I would
Yeah.
actually save the money and list vacant photos, right? Or, we talked about cash on cash return on investment. Go ahead and stage the house, right?
Yeah.
Going back to the example of an investor, so we've done a lot of apartments where we staged it one day, they shot it, we moved that furniture to another apartment in the building, they shot it, we destaged it, and we left all in one day. We've done uh, we've done tons of properties where we staged it and then destaged it the next day. A lot of new builds where, like, hey, we built this house specifically for a client. We're not going to put it on the market, but we want our photos to still have, like, real furniture in them, right? So
Yeah.
we'll stage it and then destage it the next day. We're working with a company right now that they're working on augmented reality and virtual reality. So we will go in, we'll stage a room for them. They'll do all the wizardry behind the cameras and the computers and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll destage it and make it a different type of room the next day and a different type of room the next day. So,
That's
I
cool.
think there's a lot of nuances to that question. But, first and foremost, like, we were out to be client and customer centric. So if you have a need around furniture, we can figure out how to make it happen. Timelines. I mean, you can call my team right now and say, hey, I need this property staged tomorrow. What can you do? We had the Orlando team had a guy reach out last night at 6 p.m. and say, hey, I know this is really short notice, but we had a contract with another staging company and they did not show up today.
Ooh.
Can you guys stage this tomorrow? This is 6 p.m. The office is closed. They said absolutely. Sent him a contract. He signed it. We're staging it right now. So um, we'll
That's
make it.
awesome. Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that virtual or digital staging being more hurtful than helpful. Because I would go back to the analogy of walking to your hotel room, expecting it to be clean, put together, ordered, and you open the door and everything's chaos. And you're like, well, that sucks. Like that feeling, that gut feeling that you got is going to sit there that whole weekend that you're there because they missed it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to have that for a buyer. And like, that's just not a good foot you want to start out on. And I was trying to think of like with a home sale and a tenant turnover are two different marketings because you get a lot of foot traffic and people coming through your listings. But a tenant turnover, I get a lot of like window shopping. The emails are like, hey, is this still available? I saw your pictures. But like very few are going to come and see the unit, except if they are very, very prone to renting. So the virtual kind of different on that scope. But yeah, for a home sale, even me, like I either, like you were saying, go all in or don't do it because you're going to do more harm by virtually doing it on a home sale side of it. So like I
What
completely agree with you there.
Earlier, don't half-ass two things, whole ass.
Yes,
Hey, don't half-ass one thing either. Like anything that's worth doing is worth overdoing. So we're just like creating a perfect loop here.
I like that. The segues got us all the way home. And we reached an hour, but I have like more I can ask on that, but we try to keep it to an hour just because I feel like it gets a little bit too long. But Dan, did you have any follow-up questions that you wanted to ask that were sitting there?
I was gonna say you're
I guess
so I'm here for you, whatever.
okay, cool. Um, I was going to go back to the virtual staging. I think to me, not that it's that relatable, but like when it's like when you see something that's for sale on Amazon and it's they take a photo or whatever the product is and they like Photoshop it into on like if it's a backpack onto somebody or the
Yeah.
size and the scale is completely off and then the lighting is off and you can completely tell. That's what I think about when I think of like virtual staging because I don't think enough time or effort is going to be put in to make sure that the lighting of the picture matches the lighting of whatever furniture that you're going to be putting in there. And then at what point is the cost or the affordability? What's the trade off there? Because if you spend too much time trying to make every photo for every room accurate or perfect, you're going to be either losing money as a company or you're going to be charging too much for that service. So, like you
Yeah.
said, I don't see virtual staging as a great option or even a good option. Um, the other question I have is like, what kind of things are you looking for? Or do you have anybody like on your team for like innovating? Like, what is the next level or the next step of staging, right? Like, I have a random idea. Again, I told you another challenge. If you have a house that's on the market for, let's call it 60 plus days, and you have obviously realtors or agents in your phone book on your phone, your contact list, and you say, hey, you got any properties 60 days old? They're not selling, and maybe they are staged, but then they have a client that's interested in looking at it. Would you ever consider like it's really random, like hiring almost like actors to portray like a barbecue in the backyard, or like sitting down in the man cave watching a football game or an event, and then having the clients come in and see that atmosphere, right?
You already have a
And
background in movies.
I'm just saying, like,
Let's film those
not
movies.
not even specifically to that.
I don't know anything about cameras.
Yeah. So, I mean, something like that. I mean, that's just a random thought that I have. But do you have what is like some innovative ideas that you maybe guys are coming up with or going to be looking forward to doing?
So one of our driving philosophies as a company is that we will get to yes. So if you have a crazy idea and it involves anything even close to our core competencies, we're going to figure out how to pull it off. I hadn't thought about hiring actors at an open house, but I like where your head's at on this one. And I'm going to throw that out as a challenge to a couple of realtors. Um, but yeah, we'll get to yes on anything. I mean, I think one of the really cool things that we are getting to, going back to that, the scale, different operating locations, now we don't have one staging coordinator, we have two staging coordinators. And as we expand, into other territories this year and next year, then we'll have 3, 4, 5 staging coordinators. We'll have a, you know, director of staging that now, oversees the mastermind of 5 staging coordinators. And we've got, 5 sales coordinators, and now we've got a sales manager and a marketing manager who just started Tuesday. And that's a lot off of my plate now that I can be a little bit more forward thinking. But you know there's a lot of masterminds out there. We're able to run our own now because we've got a great team. And we also referenced this at one point, but I think it's a really, really good question to ask your team and to ask yourself, if we did do it, how would it be done? Right? Because I think so And listen, I don't hire. When I hired the sales and marketing manager, I was like, hey, I don't want you to treat me as your boss. Like, now that you're part of this mastermind, you have a seat at the table. I want you to view yourself as a partner.
Hmm.
And I tell a lot of my employees that I don't want you guys to, just say yes, sir, or whatever, and just do what you're told, right? We have biweekly one-on-ones with every single person on the team, regardless of their position. So, they have a seat at the table because we want to know where those innovative ideas are coming from. And, one of our core values is inspiration. We want to lead from the front. And so anyway, I'm open to whatever challenge.
Yeah, and I can't remember what book it was, but I've taken the term from it. They talk about entrepreneurs, and a lot of people want to be entrepreneurs. We're trying to create entrepreneurs. Like eventually, like everybody can't be an entrepreneur because you need some workforce to create the bus to go. So they were talking about entrepreneurs. So you're not going to start your own company, but in the position you are in a position where you are head of that and you are the ideas person. You're driving that bus. You need to have the hat on in the mantra of like, I am developing and my ideas are what are creating this little microcosm in terms of the whole company.
Hmm.
So I've liked that entrepreneur mindset. And that's what I tell like my foreman. We come up with a problem. Like you can have your build plans, but as you get to building, there's always going to be little areas where you're like, oh, I didn't think about this. When I open the cabinet, this is obstructed. Or if this is here, that causes a problem. Like I'll turn to him like, hey, I'll have an idea and you'll have an idea. I trust your workmanship. Where do you think the best path is? Like you can figure this one out. I'm probably 99% going to go with it. And giving them the autonomy to just make their own decisions, one takes things off of my plate.
On your team, and I mean that's why I ended up having to clear out half the team in San Antonio in April of last year because the guy really at the point of that, you would give him an opportunity to make a decision, and you can see that there's three possible options, and there's one that's clearly the best and there's one that's clearly the worst. He would
Yeah.
do the one that was clearly the worst.
Yeah.
um and that's tough. So you have to hire really, really well. You have to have a mission statement, you have to have a vision statement, you have to have core values, you have to hire and fire based off of those core values. You have to have, right and left boundaries because, I heard this statistic in April of last year that like only 3% of the population is wired to be that entrepreneur that we're talking about, right? The rest, like something like 78% of the population, they still want to innovate, they still want to have a seat at the table, but they do want you to give them the right and left boundaries where they have
Yes.
permission to make a decision within those boundaries. And it's up to us as the business owners to create those right and left boundaries.
Yes.
Another one of our core values is accountability, and hold people accountable to those right and left boundaries. Even for myself, I have to put right and left boundaries on myself, as an example, and hold myself accountable to those right and left boundaries. So,
Yeah.
you have to hire well to pull that off.
Yeah. And create the boundaries you were saying. Do you know who Jordan B. Peterson is?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Whether you like him or you don't like him, there was a soundbite on him like 2 weeks ago. I listened, and he was a professor, and in the segment he was talking about was back in his days when he was a professor. He was talking about those laws was where they started from. And he said, "Okay, do you want to play a game?" And he said, the student was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Okay, you go first." And then the student just like stood there and he's like, "Do what?" And he's like, "Just go first." And the student's like, "Yeah, but where do I go?" And he's like, "Exactly. You need some sort of boundary. You need some rule to get you to go, even though you have no rules. There's no rules, and you still stood there. But once I put a chessboard down, there are rules to this game now. And now if I said go first, you do it. You'd move the pawn too, or you move like you start rolling. And he says, like, well, you can't throw a basketball at the board. Like that's in the rules. So it's not the complete openness of your structure, and it's not the bearing down of all of the rules, but you have to find the right equal medium to where there's structure but freedom, and then putting the right people in that system. And that was like a light bulb went off for me on that one.
Yeah.
That dude's a wealth of just
Really off
general.
topic, but when you talk about Jordan Peterson and whether you like him or not, like, man, how much damage has that statement done to civilization? Oh, and really since, I mean, it's magnified since 2016. It's like,
Yeah.
now whether you like a person or not plays into whether they have something worth listening to.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. I mean, that has done so much damage to, the human psyche, because now, you can't listen to people that you quote unquote aren't supposed to listen to. And
Yeah.
I don't subscribe to that.
I listen to everybody.
Yeah, me too.
So why not? In even on topics of things I don't agree with, I'll turn on the other side's radio or newscast to see what's going on because, like, I don't know, it's all knowledge. I get to decipher how I want to decide on it, but I'm gonna get the info. So
Yeah, I had a history teacher. Anyway, we're like really out in the weeds now. I
it
had a
happens. It's the end of the show. It's the end of the show.
yeah, right on. History teacher back in 10th grade, and he would, when he would assign a paper, he's like, in your paper, I want to know your assessment of, their paradigm, how they see the world. Don't need to know that it lines up with your paradigm, but at least that you are, aware of how to start processing that kind of information. And I think now, like in social media, we, like, the algorithms are so finely tuned to show you what they know that you'll engage with, so you don't kind of get that challenging perspective or thought
Yeah.
anymore.
Echo chamber.
Total. Yeah, exactly. I just think it's important to have conversations, and maybe not even pick sides. Like
Be
everybody.
objective or be the devil's advocate, or yeah, being receptive or cognizant that there is other opinion, not just your fact, not just your own, and that's what it is. Like, yeah, being open to have that healthy dialogue, and you could get into a heated argument or discussion, but you could walk away with more knowledge than you left it with. I yeah, I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, stay at the table. I mean, I think the people that I just flat out will not listen to are the people that are like, oh, you're challenging my thought, so I'm gonna start screaming at you, slam my hands on the table, and walk away. It's like,
Yeah.
I won.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially.
And I hope that doesn't come across within your company where you're sitting aside and you're trying to sell the benefit of home staging and they're like, it's a waste of money, I'm not doing it. Like those are the people where, like, as much as the numbers and it will benefit, you kind of just have to like sit back and say, like, you're not the client we're going to take on. I'm just going to keep focusing my energy on the people that are open to idea. Not saying that they're like 100% going to buy every time, but they're open to the idea of what you have to say and how you can benefit. Because even when I was talking to the agent and she was saying home staging, I was devil's advocate. I was like, this is a new house. It's perfectly done. We don't need to hide any flaws. Like it's an open concept. They'll see it. They'll get it. Because I wanted to see how much they'd push in the benefit. And if they believed in it, like that made me feel better too. But yeah, I was throwing out objections even though I know the numbers on it.
I want to throw out a challenge specifically to the San Antonio market. I've owned this company now for 3.5 years, and there is a cohort of agents in San Antonio that almost take joy out of talking me out of this being a viable business model. Right?
Really?
We don't need a stage. We've never needed a stage. That notion of like, this is how we've always done things, which if you are not challenging that notion at every given time, you're just not growing as a person, as a company, as an
Yeah.
industry. You always need to challenge that notion. Um, but if you're not staging in this market, you're really doing your client a disservice. Uh,
Yeah.
you're not being that fiduciary in the transaction, right? Because we're talking about 88% faster, 17 to 20% more, 30x cash on cash return on investment. So I just want to throw down, just this blanket challenge that if you are listing a vacant house right now in this market,
Yes.
more or less failing your client.
Yes.
I know that's strong. I'm a strong guy.
I agree.
Yep.
Because I would, and I'm going to go back to my terrible hotel analogy, and bringing it up to Wisconsin. Hotels don't need to do anything special to sell out during a Packer game. Every hotel room is sold out weeks before the game. We just got done with a year of a Packer game. Like all of the houses on the market are gone in 2 days, 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many buyers. There was not enough inventory. That was such a weird little blurb. So if you're an agent saying we don't need a stage, they're already selling. I agree. That was a Sunday Packer game. We are now in the everyday norm. You need to have a good product. You need to show your prospective buyers that you care and that you have the marketing show side of that sale. Like it needs to happen. We're flipping back into normal. That's what I would equate it to.
So along with that challenge, like you said, do you sell the staging offer to the seller of the house or to the agent?
Excuse me. Really either one.
Okay.
Um, I tell the agents that the sellers probably should pay because when we're talking about that transaction, the seller is walking away with way more return
Yeah.
than the agent is. But, you know, be the agent that has that in their toolkit, that has that conversation in their back pocket, who can pitch the value, who can prove the value in their numbers. Um, and if your client absolutely will not do it, I mean, we do have agents that say, you know what, I'm going to front it because this is part of my brand, this is part of my competitive edge, but
Mhm.
you're going to pay me back at closing.
So, and then I guess that was the reason I asked too, because if you put the pitch or the sale in the hands of the realtor, do they have the passion like you or your salespeople would? And then if they say, well, I talked to my client, they're not really interested. And would you, I mean, have you ever gone to say, hey, well, let me talk to your client for you, and it's in your best interest to let me, right? Because at the end of the day, you're increasing then your commission on this transaction 17, 20%, whatever it may be. If you're listing at 400,000 and you get as a realtor in our area, what is it, 6% normally, Marcus? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, four
Somewhere
to
around
six.
there, right? And then if you go from a listing price of 400, but then with staging, you're pushing 500, 525 or whatever the actual numbers may be, you're talking an additional $6,000 commission, right? Or increase in commission on your end, if my math is right.
Yeah, they split
So
it
I guess
in the ballpark.
maybe having more passion or more intent with that conversation to the selling for the sellers as opposed to passing it through to the agent. Because like I said, the agent sometimes some of them, like you said, just want the quick buck. We've never had the stage houses, and they're still flying off the market. Well, cool, they're flying off the market, but at a lower value, or so. Um, just like I said, random questions that pop in my head that I maybe think that they're a little bit relevant to what you're trying to accomplish there. So
Yeah, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, we want industry partners. So if, the sales team needs to hop in on that conversation with you to help you promote your brand, absolutely, we're going to do it. You know, realtors have kind of had a year's worth of Packer games to extend
Yeah,
that analogy too. And, they've had to compete so hard for listings that they don't, they don't want to rock the boat, so to speak. But, I think, in this market, what's going to differentiate your house from another house is also going to differentiate one agent from another agent. So I think that mindset is going to shift. I just want to challenge San Antonio specifically to really take this market seriously and choose, what your competitive edge is going to be.
Yeah. And then decide to go staging, and then decide to go to Pat O'Brien's after the closing and enjoy the fruits of the labor in that one.
With the cast of your live action staging event.
Totally. Live action staging, that's going to be great.
I mean, so my random idea was like go to the local high school and take some of the theater kids, obviously with the director present, or the theater class director, and bring them there and say, hey, this is what we're looking to accomplish. Can you guys mimic this? I mean,
they might get a kick out of that.
Completely random too. Like, hey, can you guys just go like in the basement watching TV and make TikToks? Like, go through the motions of making TikToks. That's what most teenage kids, not generalizing on that level, but that may be what they can envision their kids doing that in that space.
The number one thing that kids want to be when they grow up now is an influencer in the US. That just came out. So you hit on the head. Creator. Yeah. Have them just go be influencers and we'll videotape it. You got some like TikTok dances going on in the background.
So, great talking with you. The only thing I want to ask is, I know you got an event coming up. Is it end of February?
Yeah, it's an industry event. It's specifically for home stagers. But yeah, I'm going to be speaking at the International Association of Home Staging Professionals. Just really talking about running your business, or your business is going to run you. And this is something that, like I came really close to burnout last year because I'm like, man, in kind of the spirit of, endurance races and sales performance and stuff, I can run harder, longer than anybody else. And I learned that only goes so far, right? So
yeah,
when we're talking about right and left boundaries, when we're talking about core values, when we're talking about mission vision, like, you have to have all these things running, or else your business is just going to run you over.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
New Orleans, okay. And is there still like tickets available for people to buy to go to that event? Like,
yeah, for home stagers, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
But yeah, we're kind of all over the place. I think we can send you guys a QR code that you can post on this, which will take you to our link tree where you can connect with us on social. You can hit our website. If we are not currently in your market, we will be, because we want to be nationwide. We want to take this philosophy that we have to the entire country. But if you are in Florida, if you are anywhere near Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, the Hill Country, if you do Airbnbs in either one of those areas, anywhere in Florida or in those areas of Texas, give us a call. Because again, with that philosophy, we do it better, faster, cheaper than anybody else.
The website is thestaging.co.
That's right.
Okay. Very good.
Awesome. Yeah, we're going to work on getting you up to Wisconsin as quick as possible.
As long as quick as possible isn't until at least May.
Deal, May.
That's when the weather gets nice anyway, so why not? We'll start looking for some commercial warehouse property for you.
I was up in Bend, Oregon a couple of weeks ago visiting family, and they already had snow on the ground. I'm like, this place is not for me.
Yeah,
I know. Need a giant bubble for the winter months, but that'll be, I think we'll get to Mars first before we invent that one.
Totally. Yeah.
But it was so much fun talking to you.
Absolutely.
To see the transition from where you started to where you are now is super cool, where you're hosting an international home staging convention. So that's awesome. We will talk again soon, I'm sure. Thank you for all the knowledge. Hopefully our viewers got something out of it. I know I learned a lot. And thank you for the contact information. We'll add that to the show notes so that if we have questions, I know you're not in Wisconsin, but if our listeners from Texas and Florida want to get a hold of you, they know how to do that as well. So I appreciate that. And we'll also, are you on Instagram? All that kind of stuff? Is that in the QR code?
Our whole link tree is on the QR code.
Sweet. So we'll make sure to put that in the show notes for you.
Yeah, and people, here's a free business idea for everybody. Don't carry around business cards. Carry around these things with your QR code and the name of your company on them.
I've seen a version, it's like a credit card that you'd go out and they'd scan your card, but then again, you're holding basically a business card, but it
Yep.
remotes right to their phone, which was like the key technology to it.
Yeah,
But
I mean, any camera can scan this,
I
and
like that.
yeah, takes them right to our link tree. It's super helpful. Anyway,
I like it. I like
yeah,
it. Very
thanks for
cool.
having
Awesome.
me. This was a blast. I just uh, a business coach of mine a long time ago was just like, hey, all businesses is finding like-hearted kings in the industry. Back in the day when kings were at war, everybody went together, and I think 2020 kind of kicked off a season for every small business owner that said, hey, you're all startups again. Nobody
Yeah.
is guaranteed anything. In fact, some people are going to put limitations on whether you're allowed to be in business or not. Um, Small business owners coming together, holding each other up, supporting each other, masterminding together. I mean, that's what's going to differentiate all of us in the next 5-10 years. So very happy to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Right back at you.
Thanks a lot, Brandon.
Talk soon. Thank you.
Absolutely.
You're mocking me. Oh, that's hilarious.